Most parents don't notice the early signs of ADHD because they don't look like a problem at first. They look like personality, high energy, curiosity, sensitivity. A child who asks too many questions, moves constantly, or struggles to slow down. And because these behaviors often appear in loving, intelligent, creative kids, they're usually dismissed as just a phase. But here is the part that matters. Early signs of ADHD are not about how smart a child is or how well they behave. They're about how the brain regulates attention, emotion, and impulse under everyday pressure. This is why so many parents feel confused. One moment, their child seems focused and capable. The next moment, they're overwhelmed, impulsive, or completely tuned out. That inconsistency is often the first clue. ADHD doesn't mean a child can't focus. It means their brain struggles to control where focus goes, especially when tasks are boring, emotionally demanding, or lack immediate reward. What makes this even harder is that early childhood brains are still developing. Many ADHD-like behaviors overlap with normal development. The difference isn't in a single behavior. It's in the pattern, the intensity, and how often a child struggles compared to others their age across multiple environments. One early sign parents often notice is difficulty with transitions, moving from play to homework, from screen time to bedtime, from one activity to another. Most kids resist transitions sometimes, but children with early ADHD traits often experience transitions as a full nervous system overload. It's not stubbornness. Their brain struggles to disengage from one state and shift to another. This is why reminders don't work and repetition often makes things worse. Another sign is emotional reactions that seem bigger than the situation. Small frustrations lead to intense meltdowns. Minor disappointments feel catastrophic. This isn't because the child is dramatic or manipulative. It's because the emotional regulation systems in the brain are still immature. ADHD affects the brain's braking system. Emotions accelerate quickly, and slowing them down takes more effort than it does for other children. Parents often describe these kids as emotionally younger than their age. That's not an insult. It's an observation. Emotional development doesn't always match intellectual development. A child might speak well, reason well, and still struggle deeply with impulse control and emotional recovery. This mismatch is one of the most misunderstood aspects of ADHD. Attention is another area that gets misinterpreted. Early ADHD doesn't look like constant distraction. It often looks like hyperfocus on preferred activities and total shutdown during non-preferred ones. A child might build something for hours, then be unable to sit for 5 minutes during a routine task. This confuses parents because it contradicts the idea that ADHD equals short attention span. In reality, it's an attention regulation issue, not an attention deficit. You may also notice impulsive behaviors that don't improve with explanation, interrupting conversations, acting before thinking, touching things despite repeated reminders. These behaviors aren't about disrespect. They reflect how quickly impulses move from thought to action in the brain. For these children, the pause between impulse and response is shorter. Teaching self-control requires building that pause, not punishing the impulse. Sleep can also be an early signal. Many children with ADHD traits struggle to settle at night. Their bodies are tired, but their minds stay active. Bedtime becomes a battleground not because they don't want to sleep, but because their nervous system struggles to downshift. This chronic lack of rest then worsens emotional regulation and attention the next day, creating a cycle that looks like behavior problems but is rooted in brain regulation. Sensory sensitivity is another quiet indicator. Clothing tags, loud noises, bright lights, or crowded environments may feel overwhelming. These children aren't being picky. Their brains process sensory input more intensely. When the environment feels chaotic, their ability to regulate behavior drops sharply. This is often misread as defiance when it's actually overload. Social interactions can also reveal early signs. Some children struggle to read social cues, wait their turn, or regulate excitement during play. Others are deeply empathetic but become overwhelmed by group settings. ADHD doesn't mean poor social interest. It often means difficulty managing social energy and impulse in real time. What's important to understand is that none of these signs alone mean a child has ADHD. Labels are not the goal. Awareness is. Early awareness allows parents to respond in ways that support brain development instead of triggering shame or fear. The biggest mistake parents make is trying to discipline these behaviors out of a child. ADHD is not a character flaw. It's a difference in how the brain develops and regulates itself. The good news is that the young brain is incredibly adaptable. Supportive environments can strengthen regulation skills over time. Structure, predictability, and emotional safety matter far more than punishment or pressure. Children with early ADHD traits thrive when expectations are clear, routines are consistent, and emotional connection is strong. Language matters too. Children absorb how adults interpret their behavior. When they hear, "Why can't you just behave?" they internalize failure. When they hear, "Your brain needs help slowing down," they learn self-understanding instead of shame. That difference shapes identity. Parents often worry that noticing these signs means something is wrong with their child. In reality, noticing means you're paying attention. Many successful, creative, resilient adults had these traits as children. What made the difference was support, not suppression. Early support doesn't require diagnosis or medication. It starts with understanding, with adjusting expectations, with teaching regulation skills gradually, with reducing unnecessary stressors and building environments that work with a child's brain instead of against it. Children with ADHD traits need fewer lectures and more scaffolding, fewer warnings and more preparation, fewer emotional escalations and more calm modeling. When parents shift from control to support, behavior often improves without force. It's also important to protect a child's self-esteem early. Children who grow up constantly corrected for things they can't yet control often develop anxiety, avoidance, or defiance. These are not separate problems. They're protective responses to feeling misunderstood. When parents respond with curiosity instead of frustration, the child learns that challenges are manageable, that mistakes are part of growth, that their brain is not broken, just developing differently. If you're noticing several of these signs consistently across settings, it doesn't mean panic. It means pause, observe, support, and if needed, seek guidance from professionals who understand child development, not just behavior management. The goal is not to label your child early. The goal is to raise a child who feels understood early. That understanding becomes the foundation for confidence, resilience, and emotional strength later in life. Many parents look back and say, "I wish I had known this sooner," not so they could fix their child, but so they could protect their relationship. Because children don't need to feel managed, they need to feel supported. If this video helped you recognize patterns you couldn't name before, that awareness alone is powerful. Watch your child with new eyes, not eyes searching for problems, but eyes looking for needs. Because early signs are not warnings of failure. They're invitations to support the brain while it's still wiring its sense of self. And the most important thing your child needs to hear, even if you never say it out loud, is this: your brain is learning. You are safe, and we'll figure this out together. If you want to keep learning how to support your child's brain without fear, pressure, or labels, stay with this channel. These conversations don't just help children behave better. They help children grow up believing they are capable, understood, and enough exactly as they are. There is one more piece most parents never connect, and it quietly changes everything once they do. Children with early ADHD traits are not struggling because they lack discipline. They are struggling because their brains require a different kind of support to learn regulation. When parents understand this, the entire relationship shifts. The constant tension eases. The power struggles reduce. And the child stops feeling like they are always too much or not enough. One of the biggest breakthroughs happens when parents stop asking, "How do I stop this behavior?" and start asking, What skill is my child still learning? Because every behavior you see is a skill gap, not a character flaw. Impulse control is a skill. Emotional regulation is a skill. Sustained attention is a skill. And skills develop with guidance, not punishment. This is why traditional discipline methods often fail these children. Timeouts, repeated warnings, and consequences rely on a child's ability to pause, reflect, and self-correct. But if the brain systems that support those abilities are still developing, discipline turns into pressure instead of learning. The child doesn't become calmer, they become more anxious, more defensive, or more shut down. What actually helps is slowing the environment down before expecting the child to slow themselves down. Fewer words, clearer expectations, predictable routines, visual cues instead of verbal reminders. These adjustments reduce cognitive load and give the brain room to regulate. When the brain feels less overwhelmed, behavior improves naturally. Another overlooked support is co-regulation. Young brains learn regulation through connection before they can do it independently. This means your calm presence is not a reward for good behavior. It is the tool that teaches regulation. When a child is dysregulated and the adult stays steady, the child's nervous system slowly sinks to that calm. Over time, the child internalizes it. Parents often worry that this approach is too soft, but it's actually more demanding than punishment because it requires consistency and emotional control from the adult. The payoff, however, is long-term. Children raised this way don't just behave better temporarily. They build skills that carry into school, friendships, and adulthood. Another key factor is how expectations are framed. Children with ADHD traits often hear what they rate doing wrong far more than what they rate doing right. Over time, this creates an identity of failure. When parents shift to noticing effort, improvement, and strategies instead of outcomes, children regain motivation. Motivation grows when children feel capable, not judged. It's also critical to separate behavior from identity. Saying that choice wasn't safe lands very differently than "you rate always like this." One corrects behavior, the other reshapes self-image. Children live up to the stories they hear about themselves. Make sure the story you're telling leaves room for growth. As children grow, early support becomes prevention. Children who understand their brains learn how to advocate for themselves. They learn what environments help them focus. They learn how to ask for breaks, structure, or clarity. These skills protect them from academic burnout, social rejection, and internalized shame later in life. And here's the part that often surprises parents the most. When children feel understood instead of controlled, oppositional behavior often decreases. Not because the child suddenly becomes compliant, but because they no longer feel the need to fight for autonomy. Support builds cooperation far more effectively than force ever could. This doesn't mean there will be no challenges. There will still be hard days, big emotions, moments of frustration. But those moments no longer feel like proof that something is wrong. They feel like information, signals guiding support. If you've been worried that noticing these signs means your child's future is limited, let that fear go. Many children with ADHD traits grow into adults who are creative, intuitive, resilient, and deeply empathetic. What determines the outcome is not the label, it's the support. Early awareness gives you time. Time to protect your child's self-worth, time to build skills gradually, time to adjust the environment instead of blaming the child. That time is powerful. The goal was never to decide what your child has. The goal is to decide how your child feels about themselves while their brain is still developing. If they grow up believing they are broken, they will hide. If they grow up believing they are understood, they will adapt. So if something in this video made you pause, trust that instinct. Awareness is not panic, it's preparation. And preparation is one of the greatest gifts a parent can give, because the strongest children are not the ones who never struggle. They are the ones who struggle in environments that teach them they are safe, capable, and supported while they learn. And that is how a child doesn't just cope with their brain, they grow into it with confidence. If you want to keep learning how to support your child's brain in ways that actually work, stay here. This channel exists to replace fear with understanding, pressure with clarity, and labels with insight. Because when parents understand the brain, children don't just behave better, they grow up believing they are enough. That belief shapes everything.